Welcome to the Draw My Life section of the Scarlet Threads YouTube channel, a space where we unravel women's stories, question the ordinary, and shape the future. I am Isabel. Today we dive deeply into issues affecting women's and marginalised voices. From topics including healthcare to modern-day misogyny, censorship, religion, and everything in between, we don't shy away from uncomfortable conversations. In fact, we draw them out. Today, we're focusing on women's healthcare, and we're talking about a condition that affects many women today, yet still takes many years to diagnose: endometriosis. Let's listen to Ellie's story.
Hi, I'm Ellie Colton and I'm the breakfast presenter at BBC Radio Sheffield. I'm 26 years old, and in September 2022, the 2nd of September, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. If I take you back to when I first started my period, and it almost feels a bit weird to say period and menstruation, and I really want to bash that taboo because it's so ridiculous. 50% of the population have periods, we menstruate. We need to get over feeling like it's an icky thing. But I started my period when I was 11, and they were always really, really heavy, really sore, bad pain the week before, the week after. It just felt like I was never not in pain. But because I was such a young child at that point, I didn't know any different. I remember them being in year 9, so I started my period at the end of primary school. I remember being in year 9 and we were getting taught about puberty and periods and all the rest of it. And my science teacher said a healthy period lasts between 3 to 5 days. And this has stuck with me all this time. So what are you, 14 or something in year 9? And I remember sticking my hand up and asking, but what if they last longer? And he said they shouldn't. And that was it. They shouldn't. There wasn't any explanation. If they last longer, it could be PCOS, it could be endometriosis, it could be adenomas. I can't say that one properly. The sister condition to endometriosis. There was none of that. It was almost like menstrual health wasn't a thing even 12 years ago when I was in year 9, which is so ridiculous. How would it have taken long to just say there are conditions connected to menstrual cycles? And of course, it's not all the menstrual cycle, because endometriosis is a full body inflammatory condition, and I always advocate for that. It's not in inverted commas, period disease. It affects your whole body. They've linked it to autoimmune diseases. Only last week, BBC News did an article about, for the first time ever, it's linked to other autoimmune diseases, and we've never had this before because the research, the funding hasn't been put into studying endo. There are more studies on male baldness, then there are endometriosis. And now this article came out and says it's linked to things like MS, multiple sclerosis. It's linked to things like celiac disease, which I have. It's also linked to rheumatoid arthritis, which I'm being investigated for at the moment. So it all makes sense. But so I had my periods at 11, really painful. I started to get bad bloating and joint pain. At the age of 15, I was then diagnosed with celiac disease, which is where, it's actually Celiac Awareness Month at the minute, boop, boop. It's where your small intestine sends off these distress signals if you eat gluten, wheat, barley, rye, oats, spelt, or get cross-contaminated. So if you use your toaster for your gluten bread, then I stick mine in afterwards. That's cross-contaminating and I couldn't eat it because a crumb really does do enough to affect you. So I got diagnosed with that, and I thought, well, maybe that's the reason for my all-round pain and bloating. And as I got older and I went to the doctors about my really heavy periods, so I was 17, 18, they said to me, well, you need to take the pill. And this is what people with endometriosis get told all the time. You just need to take the pill. And then when I was on the pill, I was still getting really, really heavy periods, bad bleeding, constant pain. The fatigue was unbelievable, and it still is to this day. Not fatigue where you're a bit tired, fatigue to the point you can't even believe that you have to get out of bed that day. Serious pain in my legs, as if I'd run a marathon, lower back pain, nausea, all of it, just every symptom you can think of. And this is another thing that we get funny about talking about. Endometriosis affects your bladder and it affects your bowels. Sometimes you're really constipated, sometimes you need to go that minute, sometimes you're having 20 wees a day, and other times you're getting urine infections and you need to go 50 times a day instead. It really is debilitating. It affects every aspect of your life. You can't sleep, you're irritable. It's just unbelievable. unbelievable. I kept going back to the doctors and they said, well, do you know what we'll do? We'll stick the little, is it called a naproxen implant in your arm? It's like a progesterone only implant that people have in their arm. So I had that in, and do you know what? It worked for a bit. So when the time of it was up and they said, do you want to put another one in? I said, yeah, go on then. But then my periods became unbearable. I was on my period for 3 months at a time. I'd then have a 3-week break and then I'd be back on it again for 3 months. It was just unbelievable. And this went on and on. So they said, take the pill at the same time. I'm thinking, what the hell am I putting into my body? And I was also told that if you take too many contraceptions, then for some reason one does the other one out and you might actually be able to get pregnant because it cancels the other one out. I'm thinking, what is going on? It was crazy. And after years of going back and getting the implant taken out my arm and going on the pill every single day without a break to just stop my periods, even though still sometimes I bleed through, eventually I was put, after about 7 years of trying, I was put on the waiting list for laparoscopy. I had to wait a year for a diagnostic laparoscopy, the keyhole surgery, to diagnose it. When that woman came to my room after I'd woken up from surgery and said, we found endometriosis, it was the biggest relief of my life. They showed me pictures they'd taken of my womb, and endometriosis looks like these little black scars and these little black scabs all over my womb. My ovaries were clear, hopefully, so that's, I hope, puts me in good stead to try and have a baby when I'm a little bit older. But then 50% of those with endo can't conceive naturally. So the relief was there, but then there's no aftercare. You have endometriosis and that's it. Do you want to be put into temporary medical menopause? No, not really. And a lot of people say that they have that and it still doesn't help symptoms. And I think the biggest thing for me is it's women's pain not being believed. For me to go to A&E and they go, can you go home and manage your pain? For me to get my appendix took out when they could have just said, you know, we're going to put you on a waiting list for a laparoscopy. So I'm a huge advocate for talking about it. I know I've gone on for a bit now, but that's my story.
If this story resonated with you, share it, comment below with your experiences. And if you have a story that's been silenced, we want to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell and follow us on socials at Scarlet Threads for more.